Hello, Saints. Today I'm looking at Romans chapter 1, verses 16 and 17. Paul writes, "For I'm not ashamed of the gospel, for it has the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek. For in it the righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, but the righteous man shall live by faith." This was at the heart of the Reformation. These two verses is what really would be the hallmark, the proof text for the Reformation of the days of Martin Luther. And the reason why is because when he reads in here about the gospel being the power of God to save, he says that it's manifested in God's righteousness, his justice. Now, when Martin Luther first was trying to understand what God's righteousness was about, he actually feared it. In fact, he hated it, and he hated God for it, because he knew that he was a sinner, that he wasn't righteous, and that if you were to stack him up next to God, all that he could receive from God was condemnation. And so when he saw God's righteousness, to him, that wasn't a good thing because it meant his doom. Until he realized that God's justice, his righteousness, wasn't against us, but for us. And then he began to understand what it meant to live by faith, and that it is by faith by the righteous man. And he shall live from faith to faith. And not this doesn't mean a one-time experience where you have faith in God and accept Christ, but as you journey along from faith to faith, from high point to high point, as you grow in Christ, the righteous man lives by faith. And it's this righteousness that's imputed to us by God to redeem us, reconcile us back to him. This is what made Martin Luther um, sing, so to speak. He felt reborn, made new, when he realized what this was really all about. Next to the word faith in the Latin Bible, he writes the word only, or it is in Latin, sola fide, faith alone. Faith alone, which isn't alone. And to him, the concept was that being a Catholic monk, one was saved by faith in works. And here it was saved, he understood, by faith alone, not faith with works. He would later on, in a more expanded view of the gospel, write in Galatians chapter 2, verse 16, which is a very important text for us to understand because the dichotomy is between faith and works. He writes in verse 16 of chapter 2 of Galatians, "Nevertheless, knowing that a man is not justified by the works of the law, but through faith in Christ Jesus, even we have believed in Christ Jesus, so that we may be justified by faith in Christ, and not by the works of the law, since by the works of the law no flesh will be justified." This is something very important to understand. When Paul wrote this, he wrote it in what's called an inverse parallel or a chiasm. Notice that he starts off talking about a man is justified by the man is not justified by the works of the law, but through faith. Even have believed in Christ that we are justified by faith and not by works of the law. Notice how he reverses it. That's an inverse parallel. When you say the same thing in reverse order. And writers did that at this time to make a point, to emphasize a particular thing in what they were writing. And Paul wanted you to notice this, that it's by faith we're saved, not by works. That's why he writes in Romans chapter 3, verse 20, that is not by the deeds of the law shall any flesh be justified, but by the law of the knowledge of sin. In other words, the law can't save us, but it can tell us that we're sinners and tell us what our need is. But as far as being an avenue or a path to salvation or restoration with God, it is not. It's as if there's a sign posted there, no road here. But the law tells us that we need. And who do we need? Jesus Christ. The gospel is God's power to save. Believe it. Blessings.